Hello, my name is Ian Dean, and today I'll be talking about MeshBaker, which is a tool for combining assets or meshes and textures on those meshes into a single large combined mesh and into texture atlases. This all happens very easily and automatically. Why did you want to do that? Performance. In Unity, every object has its own draw call, and these draw calls are expensive, so if you can combine them, your game will go much faster. So let's look at this simple scene. I've got all these individual objects all created from prefabs. It'd be nice if I could easily combine those. Well, that's what MeshBaker does for us. So there, I created a MeshBaker object in my scene. Now, MeshBaker, the first thing it wants is a prefab to put the combined mesh into and a material to apply for that. And it uses the material to know what shader to use, and that tells it which textures to look for on the object that we're combining. So let's do those things. So first I'm going to create the prefab. I just browse the directory where I want it. I'll call it platforms. Save, and then there's our new prefab and our new material. So let's decide what we want to combine. So I've got all these objects. A good way to do this is if I go back to my MeshBaker, I click Open Tools for adding objects. I can click List Shaders in Scene, and then if I click this, it gives me a little report telling me what shaders there are and what materials and objects use them. So I can see that the trees all use the same shader, and the platforms almost all use self-illume bump diffuse. So that would be good to maybe create two MeshBaker objects, one for self-illume bump diffuse and one for diffuse. So let's do that. I just created that MeshBaker object. So the first thing I'll do is set the shader to self-illume bump diffuse, and this tells MeshBaker to look for these textures in its source objects and build the atlases out of those. So now I need to add the source objects, so I can do this the Unity way, where I drag these one by one in, which is nice, but can be slow, especially if you're combining 100 objects. So we devised some tools to make that faster. So I just select the parent, and I can set filters here, but in this case it's unnecessary. So I just click Add Selected Meshes, and then it's added those objects all to the MeshBaker. So now I just bake it. So this can take a little bit, especially if there's a lot of textures, and so MeshBaker works away. What it's going to do is it's going to create a mesh and several atlas textures. There it is. There's the mesh, 3 atlas textures, and it's built this prefab and put those onto those textures in the right places. And so there you can see the result. Now I probably want to do the same thing with the trees. So I create another MeshBaker object for the trees. There it is. I'm going to create an empty prefab, put it in the same place. We'll call this one trees. Save. I want to set up the trees material to be just diffuse, which it already is. I'm going to select the parent object of all my trees in the scene, and I just click Add Selected Meshes, and it added 7 trees to my MeshBaker object. And all I have to do now is bake. Oh, no meshes to combine. What happened here? Oh, I added those to the wrong MeshBaker object. So select trees, and then bake meshes into prefab, and I can drag my trees into the scene, and there are my baked trees. Well, thank you very much. I hope it's available in the asset store if you're interested.